Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. I recently read a book called From Strength to Strength by Arthur C. Brooks, and I'd like to talk a bit about that today. While this book is sometimes positioned as a guide for midlife and beyond, its lessons actually apply very directly to consulting actuaries at any stage in their careers. So let's explore this together. A central idea in the book is that our cognitive strengths don't just grow linearly throughout our careers, but they tend to change shape over time. Early in our careers, actuaries tend to rely more on fluid intelligence, which is characterized as raw processing power, speed, the ability to solve unique problems. And it's also during this stage that some people earn another degree, they get published, and they get noticed. And then later, during the crystallized intelligence stage, wisdom, pattern recognition, judgment, and the ability to teach and synthesize becomes relatively stronger. It is during this stage that people might focus more on mentoring and on leading teams and training others. As consulting actuaries, we should plan for and embrace this shift. Earlier in our careers, you tend to be prized for your technical mastery on rapid modeling, on coding, and being the person who can learn things quickly. Others begin to depend on you, and you may be rewarded and recognized for speed, accuracy, and efficiency. And then in your mid and later career, your differentiated value increasingly comes from judgment on what matters in the analysis, how to frame trade-offs for clients, how to train others, how to navigate messy stakeholder dynamics. Making the shift requires that we intentionally spend more time on product and solution review, on client storytelling, and on coaching. So how has this book impacted me personally? I wish I had read this book sooner in my career so that I could have been more aware and deliberate about the transition that was happening for me from the first to the second curve. As I moved from being an analyst to a project leader, to a thought leader, and then eventually a relationship manager. As a consulting actuary, I've understood the importance of communication skills, and this book solidifies those ideas, and it points out that one, stronger communication is indeed where crystallized intelligence shines. And then two, outcomes are key. They're the main focus. If a client asks me about retirement plan eligibility, or automation, or something like pre-tax versus Roth versus after-tax contributions, I try to steer the discussion toward outcomes for the company, such as costs, or for employees, outcomes, retirement income adequacy, things like that. I also need to focus my intent more on relationships, especially now as I plan on retiring relatively soon. A key issue here is, besides my spouse, who do I turn to as a real friend rather than as a, quote, deal friend? And again, think of your deal friends as the ones who are primarily your relationships through work and only work, and acknowledging that a deal friend can certainly become a real friend, but they tend to be much fewer in number. So in conclusion, at last year's annual meeting, Lee Gold, who was one of our award recipients, said something that stuck with me. He said something like, "When's the best time to plant a tree?" And the answer is 10 years ago. If you haven't already, I hope you have a chance to read this book and to think about how Lee's quote might apply to your life. You don't need to be nearing retirement to think about these issues. If anything, the actuarial mindset and long-term thinking that we embrace provides a real advantage for all of us. The earlier that you invest in your second stage skills, the more likely you are to be able to transition, according to this book, from strength to strength. Have a good day.